Joe Biden getting cancer. Joe Biden, for those of you who don't know, maybe you haven't been paying attention. Joe Biden was the president. Okay. He was, and even before he was the president, he was the vice president to Barack Obama. Okay. That's the guy. You might not have known because he didn't have a lot of motion. He was basically decaying in office. But yeah, he was the president before this last one. And a lot of the stuff that he did, especially in like the last year of his presidency, pretty much handed the victory to Donald Trump. This is something that is not up for debate at this point. I feel like most liberals, up until this like cancer announcement, was pretty much universally recognizing that the number one most responsible party beyond the Republicans was Joe Biden for the Trump victory, right? And of course, things change because liberals, when they hear about someone who is like truly a repulsive monster or genuinely like an evil person getting cancer or dying, they instantly whitewash. They instantly have to launder their reputation. Like when George W. Bush dies, you will see this exact same phenomena take place. When Dick Cheney dies, when Dick Cheney dies, I feel like, I mean, that's the rapture probably. Like he is Satan incarnate. So I feel like, the world will be moving and shaking, right? I just don't understand I get the tendency for civility. I get the tendency that liberals have where a big part of what the media's job is to specifically normalize the actions and normalize the actions that presidents take when they're in office. Normalize that violence, normalize the structural forms of oppression that people are experiencing. That is the goal, right? So of course they're going to whitewash, launder his reputation, and talk about how wonderful of a statesman he was and how he gave his whole life to the American state. I don't play like that. The only time where I was like kind of nice about someone dying was Carter. And even then I was pretty stern about making sure that people understood all of the actions that he took in office and how damaging and devastating that was, regardless of how he conducted his own personal affairs post his presidency. But Joe Brandon has cancer. He has prostate cancer, and it's like pretty severe for his age, it seems, even though I guess it's like responsive to hormones. So they're transing him. They're transing Brandon in order to stop him from dying from prostate cancer, ass cancer, the part of your butt that's also connected to your penis, the G spot for men. All right, let's watch.
With the prostate cancer diagnosis for former President Biden. He has an aggressive form of the disease, and our senior political correspondent, Rachel Scott, starts us off. Good morning, Rachel.
Michael, good morning to you. And political leaders on both sides of the aisle wishing former President Joe Biden well overnight after he revealed he has been diagnosed with an aggressive form of prostate cancer, which has now spread to his bones. Former President Joe Biden announcing he has been diagnosed with an aggressive form of prostate cancer. In a statement, his office announcing Biden was seen last week for a new finding of a prostate nodule after experiencing increasing urinary symptoms. On Friday, he was diagnosed with prostate cancer.
I know it's important to talk about this stuff and remove the stigma. Why do they have to say prostate cancer? Why couldn't they just say he has cancer? Now we got to think about an 80-year-old man's anus. I don't know. I mean, I guess it makes sense because people want to be hyper specific. Whoa, what the hell? If you subscribe, you can get Crunchyroll drops. Hey, yo, let's freaking go, dude. I didn't even know that was a thing. Okay, subscribe. Do it. Crunchyroll. I don't know what kind of drops you get from Crunchyroll, but sounds cool. You and anime. Okay, calm down. Calm down. Let's I got excited when I saw the Crunchyroll drop. Let's continue with Brandon.
Cancer, which has spread to his bones. The cancer characterized with a Gleason score of 9, which medical experts say indicates the cancer cells are likely to grow and spread rapidly. His office noting while this represents a more aggressive form of the disease, the cancer appears to be hormone sensitive, which allows for effective management. At 82, Biden was the oldest sitting president when he left office in January, dropping out of the 2024 race amid concerns over his age and health. The former president recently appearing on The View.
How are you? How you doing?
I'm well. The family's well, thank God.
Stop giving a shit. Thank you for the 30.
And we're getting squared away.
Overnight, political leaders sending their well wishes. President Trump, a longtime opponent, saying he was saddened to hear about his diagnosis. Writing, "We extend our warmest and best wishes to Jill and the family, and we wish Joe a fast."
Yeah, that was whack, by the way. I was expecting more smoke from Trump, and I feel like we'll still see something today. I said this yesterday. I suspect we'll see something from Trump that's a little bit more Trumpian rather than this basic like, oh, well wishes, love the guy. Obviously, he didn't write this himself. Like, I know. It's just wild. What is this? Why do you keep spamming this?
You think you can just back out because you're scared?
Oh, yeah. Imagining a Joe Biden state funeral overseen by the Trump administration.
Damn you! You think you can just back out because you're scared? Cool bar, huh? This place is for mourning.
Okay, Cool Bar is way sicker than Donald Trump, for the record. Okay, that's crazy to make this comparison. This is a comparison that favors Donald Trump.
I'm not gonna leave. Not until he comes out of here and lets me fight him.
He can't do that.
I'm gonna beat you down, you. You hear me? Who do you think you are, huh? Dirty. Who am I gonna fight now? Who am I gonna fight?
He's gone.
No! You're supposed to be here.
Yu Hakusho. By the way, just so you're aware, finasteride decreases the risk of benign prostatic hyperplasia and low Gleason score prostate cancers, but it can potentially increase the risk of aggressive forms of prostate cancer like what Brandon has. Not fear-mongering, because I still think having a full head of hair is still worth it. Yeah, thank you for telling me that. And then saying not fear-mongering, but you could probably get Biden's incredibly extreme form of ass cancer. Thanks, chatter. I'm definitely not fearful after that not fear-mongering that you just dropped in the chat. Thank you for the tidbit. God damn. Here I was thinking like, fantastic, my hair pills are also saving me from getting prostate cancer. And the chatter has to come in and be like, actually, you're probably going to get a worse version of it. You know, it is what it is. All right, Brandon.
Since successful recovery. Biden's Vice President Kamala Harris calling Biden a fighter. "I know he will face this challenge with the same strength, resilience, and optimism that have always defined his life and leadership."
Yo, has Obama said something yet? Because Obama was one of the last. Like, I don't know if he, I mean, I'm sure he has at this point, right? He must have. No? Yes? Wait, he must have said something on Twitter. I think he might have literally been the last person to say something about it. Out of all the major figures that have been in his life, Obama was noticeably absent from the conversation until later in the day. 5 p.m. Okay, 4:56 p.m. Not too bad. He didn't immediately lock down a post. He says skill issue on Twitter. Yeah, he waited till end of the day. Michelle and I are thinking of the entire Biden family. Nobody's done more to find breakthrough treatments for cancer in all its forms than Joe. Why are they acting like Joe Biden literally was in the lab cooking up new forms of cancer treatment? I don't understand. What is this like when did this happen? He's the president, dude. He wasn't in the lab going, "All right, Jack, how do we fix this cancer? What are we doing?" Where is this coming from? Is it because he said that he wants to find a cure for cancer? Because I remember when he said, "I want to find a cure for cancer," everybody was laughing because they were like, "Oh, classic. Like, that's his pie in the sky thing that he says he's going to do. Every president has one." I don't understand. Like, I guess he's so indefensible overall that they just have to make stuff up to be like, nobody's done more to find breakthrough treatments for cancer in all forms than Joe. And I'm certain he will fight this challenge with his trademark resolve and grace. We pray for a fast and full recovery. No, I know he said he would cure cancer, chatters. I know. Brandon, on the campaign trail, said he was going to cure cancer, and we all laughed about it. And the reason why we laughed about it, because that's a ridiculous thing to say. You're the goddamn president. Like, I don't understand. I don't understand why he was like, he said that and then wait, okay, I work in cancer research. Biden's moonshot funding was historic and vital. Okay, thank you. Fair is fair. I still think it's ridiculous to be like, no one has ever stopped cancer as hard as Biden. You know what I mean? He's the president. I don't think it's appropriate to say that. It's kind of like saying Donald Trump did the most to get a vaccine out. Okay? For Operation Warp Speed, Donald Trump is perhaps the most responsible party for eradicating COVID from this planet in all forms. No, he didn't do that. He was the president at the time. And the same goes for Brandon, okay? Or like Elon made the rockets. Yes, now I feel bad. No, don't feel bad. What are you talking about? What cancer did Cuba cure? Lung cancer. He's putting his hours in at the lab. Stop with the Brandon cancer research erasure. Yeah. Anyway, for hours before the news, Beto O'Rourke was talking shit about Biden giving Trump the presidency. I kind of chuckled. I mean, it's true. He's right to say it. And even like Jake Tapper, who is a careerist who's trying to, re-enter the conversation and basically present himself as a legitimate journalist, is actively trying to he's actively trying to talk about how he was actually one of the brave journalists that talked about Biden's age, even though he came into the conversation far too late. Okay, Jake Tapper. And it's ironic because every single one of these guys are now going to turn around and be like, my bad for saying all these mean things about Brandon because he has cancer now. And it's like, why would that change the dynamic? Like, why would that change the dynamic at all? Like, he's still the same bad guy. He's still absolutely the guy who was defended by mainstream media figures, defended by the party, regardless of his mental acuity, his mental deterioration that was like something that you can experience. It was very visible. It was in broad daylight. Anyone that tries to shelter you from that truth is lying. And not only that, but he also was a major ultra-Zionist who allowed Israel to do most of this death and destruction, and he loved it so much. He loved Israel killing children so much that not only did he lie about it, like not only did he lie about why Israel must kill children because Hamas is decapitating children or whatever, all these other like insane things that he said that his own team would have to go back to the media and be like, he never saw those photos. I don't know where he's coming from. But also on top of that, he loved it so much that he lost the election. He is the second most responsible party for the Trump victory beyond Donald Trump. He is more responsible than even Kamala Harris is. Okay? This, I thought, was well established. All of a sudden, we're supposed to throw this out. But the news of Biden's cancer diagnosis has prompted some top Dems to call for conversation about the former president's cognitive abilities deceased. Personally, I don't think the fact that Biden is even in worse shape than we knew should cause us to call off the reckoning. This is what I mean. It's like liberals are going to, once again, actively try to pull back on the criticisms of Biden because he has cancer. But he was the president. And not only was he the president, but he did a lot of evil when he was the president, as most presidents do. But some of that evil and selfishness led to an even more evil and more selfish fascist leadership to take power. So no, I'm sorry. I actually do think Donald Trump is a fascist. A lot of people that say that are faking it. Okay? That's it. Liberals that tell you Donald Trump is a bad guy or he's racist or it's Mango Mussolini are faking it. They're not actually angry. If they were, they would be angry at the previous leadership through utter selfishness led to the fascist leadership that we're exhibiting right now, experiencing right now. That's it. Conversations about Biden's mental acuity should be more muted and set aside for now. Is he struggling through this? No, I don't think it should be. I think, for the record, I think, and Beto O'Rourke is correct about this. Okay, he's right. He's cooking here on the Pod Johns, and I'm gonna explain this once again. I think people that actually dial back and have a more muted approach to Brandon right now are going to still look like they're defending Brandon and his administration, which in some ways they are, because I think a lot of liberals in positions of prominence are genuinely afraid of looking like they were wrong. And instead of recognizing that they were wrong and that they were duped and that they participated in this like secret cover up of the president whose brain was melting in broad daylight, instead of openly saying like, yeah, this was up, is a major cause for distrust amongst the American population, we're not going to do that again. They're like, yeah, I still think we should not criticize Biden. I mean, he has prostate cancer. He's 90 years old. He f***ed the country already, and he's 90. Okay, he got all of his wishes. He finally became president. Sure, he was demented in the process and probably doesn't know that he was president, doesn't know what time it is, but like he still got that wish across. You know, I don't care. I don't care that he has prostate cancer. This does not change the equation, and it shouldn't change the equation for you, and it shouldn't change the equation for honest brokers, okay? People who are honestly talking about Biden's legacy need to be honest. Stop running defense.
And former President Obama praying for a fast and full recovery for his former number two, saying nobody has done more to find breakthrough treatments for cancer in all of its forms than Joe. And I am certain he will fight this challenge with his trademark resolve and grace. The former president's cancer diagnosis comes nearly 10 years after his beloved son, Beau, lost his battle with brain cancer. That loss motivating Biden to establish the Cancer Moonshot Initiative.
We can end cancer as we know it. I committed to this fight when I was vice president. It's one of the reasons why, quite frankly, I ran for president.
And we are told that the former president spent the weekend in Delaware and that both he and his family are now reviewing treatment options with his doctors, George.
Okay, Rich, of course, we are all wishing him the very best.
Now we have more on the prostate cancer diagnosis for former President Biden. He has an aggressive form of the disease. We're going to bring in our chief medical correspondent, Dr. Tara Narula. A Gleason score 9 out of 10, and we know that it has also unfortunately spread to his bones. So what does all this mean?
Exactly. Well, when you have any type of cancer, we want to know how likely is it to grow and spread. With prostate cancer, we use something called a Gleason score. That means doctors take a biopsy of the prostate. They look at it under the microscope. They take 2 of the largest samples and they look at the cells. If the cells are more normal, they get a number 1. If they're more abnormal, number 5. We add up the numbers from those 2 samples. So let's say one sample is a 3 and one sample is a 4. The Gleason score would be a 7, right? In general, the Gleason score ranges from 6 to 10, with 10 obviously being the worst or most aggressive. His score was a 9. So definitely tells us a more aggressive cancer, more challenging prognosis, more likely to spread. And as you said, we heard it did in fact spread to the bones. We know that that is a place where prostate cancer usually spreads. That means it is a stage 4B.
Like, call me ridiculous, okay? Call me an idealist if you want. But I don't think this is like, I don't think the American presidency is like Make-A-Wish shit. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think that we should be treating this as simultaneously the most powerful position on the fucking planet, but also like something that a guy just kind of deserves and should get. And we shouldn't actually criticize this immense power and how this immense power was wielded by a dude whose brain was melting. You know, how silly of me. How silly of me to say such things, that we should not treat the American presidency as though it's, a Make-A-Wish kid getting his dreams realized. This is crazy. This is before we even talk about the genocide. You know what I mean? This is before we talk about like what he did in his last year in office. It was completely psychotic. Even like before October 6th, there's plenty of stuff that you can criticize the Brandon regime October 6th is the date that I use specifically, and not October 7th, because October 6th is ironically when he revealed his like insane anti-immigrant plan. Like that was their big effort to win back voters, was to just basically try to get ahead of all of the anti-immigration, the wave of like white nativist anti-immigration sentiments that were coming from the Republican Party by saying, we're the real border party. And then Kamala endorsed everything as well. So obviously she's also responsible for this defeat. But like, it blows my mind that we're just going to forget that, all of that. Why? Because he has cancer. Come on, let the little guy rest. Like, get the out of here.
Usually that means it is not curable. It is treatable. In general, we think about prostate cancer as being slow growing and usually having a good 5-year survival, 99%. When it is spread to distant sites, then that 5-year survival drops to about 37%.
Also, the other part of this that I don't understand, and this is a good question, is how the does this guy not have a doctor prod his asshole with regular frequency? He's 90 years old. Okay. That's like, once you're 45, I feel like that's basic physical shit, you know? You get a physical once a year as a normie, not the president. A doctor's going to shove his finger in your ass, okay? So how did this happen? They stopped checking after 80? Wait, really? Apparently they stop after 70? Wait, why? They're just like, yeah, if it happens, you're going to die anyway? Is that what it is? And I also, is there also a guideline for presidential checkups? I feel like presidents probably still get like a more comprehensive checkup, including the ass prodding. I believe after 80, there's almost 100% men get prostate cancer. Like what you're describing seems like a common practice for people on insurance or like Medicare. You know what I mean? That seems like legislation that like, or that seems like guidelines that's like some insurance company wrote because they're like, well, there's too many false positives anywhere, so it's a waste of time to like go through this rigorous check. But I feel like if you're the president, you probably go through the maximum checks, right? Or I would expect you to. You don't discover stage 4 prostate cancer that is metastasized to the bone. He was actively campaigning with his diagnosis 100%. It can be detected in routine blood draw checks. Benign prostate hyperplasia, and we can't biopsy everyone. However, many health authorities advocate for the cessation of routine prostate cancer testing in men older than 75 because of the belief that most patients will have a clinically insignificant cancer and will not benefit from the therapy. Damn. So if you're a dude and you make it to like 75, you already have ass cancer. Like that's what the medical consensus is on this, where they're like, yeah, you probably have it. That is terrifying to think of. Holy shit. If only Brandon actually eliminated cancer when he was president, like he said he was going to do, then, you know, I wouldn't be so concerned. All right, let's continue.
In a statement released by the former president's office, it notes that he's considering hormone treatment. So how does that work, and what does that tell you?
So when we talk about hormones for this, we're talking about androgen deprivation therapy. That means depriving the body of testosterone or androgens, which we know is a fuel for prostate cancer cells. So by either blocking the production of testosterone or the ability of testosterone to reach the cells, you're hopefully slowing the growth. So we know that with prostate cancer of this stage, we usually use hormone therapy to basically improve quality of life, maybe give somebody more years. Of course, hormone therapy also comes with its own side effects.
Former president's 82.
Actually, yeah. So age obviously factors into everything. We see prostate cancer usually rise with increase in age. It's the average age of diagnosis is 68. But certainly when you look at factoring in what are we going to treat this person with, you look at age, their health status, their quality of life that they want, their life expectancy, all of that factors into the treatment plan.
Well, we are all wishing him the best.
Yes,
without a doubt. All right, Doc, thank you so much for that.
Joe Biden has been diagnosed with an aggressive.
I also need to explain something to you guys, and I did this yesterday as well, but it bears repeating. In 2019, we knew that Joe Biden's health had diminished. We knew that Joe Biden's mental faculties had diminished. When I say we, I mean myself. I talked about this quite extensively. I wrote about this extensively in 2019. I wrote about it in 2020. I talked about it in the primaries where I said he's going to be a one-term president. It's crazy that like we're just kind of dropping the incumbent advantage for the upcoming election, even if he was to become the candidate, right? And there were a lot of people at the time, there were a lot of like ball knowers, a lot of politics understanders that were yelling at me for being ageist and all this stuff. And it was obvious back then. So one must ask the question once again, why did this happen? Why did this happen? Why was Biden presented as the only alternative that can defeat Donald Trump from both mainstream media outlets like MSNBC, CNN, and numerous others at a time when it was, incredibly important for the liberals to get together and rally around one candidate that would truly defeat Donald Trump? Why? Why was that the case? Why was it Biden? Well, the reason why it was Biden, the reason why it was considered to be Biden in 2020, I'm talking about, by the way, I'm not even talking about the last time. Okay. I'm talking about 2020. The reason why it was Biden was because he was the establishment pick that they thought was the one that could unite the base. Okay. Against, not Trump, against Bernie Sanders in the primaries. And if you recall, and this is something that I covered extensively at the time, you can go back and watch my VODs on this. You can go back and watch my videos on this. Basically, Biden was a non-entity in the primaries. He was not doing well at all until Jim Clyburn in South Carolina gave Biden a predictable victory. And in the aftermath of the South Carolina primaries, in that incredibly predictable victory, the media basically spun a 2 or 3 day nonstop media cycle that amounted to, at the time, I think they calculated this, it was like multiple billions of dollars of organic advertising for Biden, talking about how incredible this upset was and that he is truly the guy, and that because black people in South Carolina voted for Biden, that he must be the candidate. And if you don't like Biden, then you're probably racist, that you probably hate black people because black people in South Carolina in the primaries voted for Biden. That was the meta. That was the conversation that was impossible to avoid. And in that process, over the course of that 3-day news cycle leading into Super Tuesday, Biden got effectively carried into major victories in states on Super Tuesday that he had not even been to, that he had no campaign offices in. He won that. That's it. And meanwhile, cynically, they even moved South Carolina to the first point. Aides at both the White House and the DNC admit that the main motivation to move South Carolina first was helping Joe Biden, not uplifting black voters. They openly admit that. It is an incredibly, incredibly cynical move from the campaign. South Carolina is utterly dominated by machine politics. Like the South Carolina Democratic Party, is completely controlled by machine politics, okay? Church groups and the Democratic Party and Jim Clyburn run the show there, okay? If Jim Clyburn was a major advocate for Bernie would do gangbusters numbers over there. If they were using the same church groups and the same organizing tools that the Democratic Party machine uses in South Carolina to push for Bernie Sanders, everyone would vote for Bernie Sanders, okay? Straight up. That's it. Get mad at me all day, every day if you want. It doesn't matter. Older voters are very malleable. Black, white, doesn't matter, okay? Boomer voters are endlessly persuadable. Yes, I'm going to react to Bernie on Flagrant in a second. Why am I talking about all of this? For two reasons. One, the Democratic Party cynically weaponizes identity politics in this way in an effort to put forward establishment candidates. Sometimes they'll even erode the chances of black or brown young candidates in an effort to maintain loyalty to their establishment pick. It does not matter. They will always do this. Okay? Moving the first primary to South Carolina is a way to galvanize this, is a way to solidify this, okay? And they did it cynically. They did it, and this is an admission for it. The members of Biden's staff weren't the ones comfortable with abandoning Democratic norms. The former president enjoyed the support of the Democratic Party, which at his behest blew up the old primary schedule, putting South Carolina in the first slot. The ostensible justification was anti-racism and elevating voters of color in a heavily black state. According to Tapper and Thompson, aides at both the White House and the Democratic National Committee admitted that the main motivation was helping Joe Biden, not uplifting black voters. South Carolina was a strong state for Biden, and the thinking seemed to be that a steady performance there might put primary challenges to bed early. In other words, the DNC appeared to try its level best to tip the process in favor of reelecting a man who a majority of the public thought could not do the job. At this point, it had been 2 years At this point, it had been 2 years since numerous polls had come out that stated that 75% of Democratic Party voters wanted someone else. They did not want Joe Biden to be the candidate. They did not want Joe Biden to run for re-election. In 2022, post midterms, the Democrats were saying, we want someone else. This guy is old. Okay. Now, going back to 2020, though, the reason why I brought this up is because, to show you how cynical the Democrats are. And here's Ested's commentary on this, by the way. I think it's good. Once again, I'll say it. A huge reason this worked at a time is lack of diversity in media. Dems spent last several years repeatedly using race and identity as a shield and relying on the fact media that relied its blind spots to ensure lack of accountability. Yeah. The media's blind spots on the issue of race and a lack of interest in like intersectional politics created an opportunity for them to cynically deploy black people as a shield or as a weapon to wield from time to time to suit the interests of whatever the establishment candidate was. And they keep doing it. They still do it. They'd roll out an individual validator, pretend it spoke for everyone, and it wouldn't be properly interrogated. The South Carolina switch was obviously performative politics, but you have to know/care enough about black communities and its voters to push them. Too many don't. Ironically enough, did Joe Biden really move South Carolina to the front of the primary calendar because of black representation, or was it a cover for the establishment to protect a vulnerable president outside the view of voters? This was all the way back in April 13th, 2023. Here's Ested's coverage on it. Of course, I said, while this journey was the week-long stint where they suspected black men might not vote Democrat by the same margins they did last time, insane media week. Maybe the worst week of my professional life. 5 TV requests a day, but they're all like, so why do black men hate Kamala Harris? It's so ridiculous. And it also, once again, showcases the utter lack of interest from Democrats and also the media vehicles that they use in truly addressing some of these problems. They just only care about it from the perspective. They only care about it from the perspective of like, can we use this to beef up our support for a dying candidate? But again, I will go back to the 2020 primaries. Why was it that in the 2020 primaries, okay, black men hating Kamala was just not factually true? I know. You know who was saying that? My Caucasian ass was saying that. I kept repeating that over and over again. I kept saying a lot of people are misunderstanding the polls. They're stupid, and they think that like black men are not in favor of Kamala Harris. This must be a crisis of misogyny amongst black men. It's the problem always has been and will continue to be white people by wide swaths of the public. And that also the idea that you don't have any ownership over black and brown people anyway in the Democratic Party, especially when you don't actually do anything for them. Do you understand? You have to serve the people. You have to, win their votes. That's crazy. Republicans do try to win their votes. Anyway, I keep going back to this. Why in the 2020 primaries did they want Biden? Why did they push this old man who obviously was falling out of favor and was his brain capacity had clearly diminished? Why did they rally around him? Here's why.
I've asked other candidates this kind of question, veto question. Let's flash forward. Your president, Bernie Sanders, is still active in the Senate. He manages to get Medicare for all through the Senate in some compromised version, the Elizabeth Warren version or other version. Nancy Pelosi gets a version of it through the House of Representatives. It comes to your desk. Do you veto it?
I would veto anything that delays providing the security and the certainty of health care being available now.
That's why. Because Bernie Sanders was a threat. Now, would he have been able to actually swing America in the direction of social democracy? Would he have been able to successfully push for more social safety nets? I don't know. But it was enough of a fear from those with moneyed interests, those who have power both in the party and also all of the interest groups and the lobbying groups and the corporations that dominate the Democratic Party, that was such a major problem that they were willing to plant a dying fool who's clearly lost his touch in broad daylight, and they forced everyone to rally around. Obama forced everyone to rally around Joe Biden. It was known. It was known that his brain wasn't working as well as it once did. Okay, Biden was a retail politician susceptible to gaffes. Okay, but those gaffes sometimes made him look more human. But he was a fantastic retail politician. He was Mr. Baby Kisser. Okay, he did that. That was his main role. That was his role in the Obama administration. The kind of racist white guy that will silence the masses that are terrified of a black president who they thought was Muslim. Okay, but obviously, come 2020, like his mental capacity was diminished. I showed you differences between his speeches in like 2016 versus 2019. It was noticeable. And I think a lot of these people noticed it, but they were so terrified of Bernie Sanders and the moderate, marginal changes that Bernie Sanders was advocating for, like an expansion of the welfare state, or at least like clawing back some of the things that Trump had undermined in the prior administration. They were so afraid of that they went crazy. They went crazy and they pushed for Biden. Make no mistake. And of course, Biden's administration was filled with false promises that he ran on that he never actually followed through on. There is at this point, a lot of whitewashing and laundering of the reputation of Joe Biden that's taken place in broad daylight. I will not stand down. I think the goal here is for mainstream media to make you think that like he wasn't all that bad and that everyone's being a little crazy about it. And it's a way to actually launder their own credibility as well, to say, on the one hand, we kind of knew that he was old, but he was like really sheltered from the public. But also on the other hand, don't think too much about it, because then it's really up. If you think too much about Biden's diminished mental faculties and how we actually ran cover for it, then, you're going to start being skeptical of the narratives that we present. Meanwhile, what a lot of these people don't realize is that this lack of interest in doing good journalism is unironically part of the reason why so many people have completely dropped support, and so many people completely refuse to believe any of the narratives coming out of mainstream sources, mainstream resources. Another great example of this is the things that people can see with their own two eyes on social media about the plight of Palestinians versus what they see in mainstream news. There are some good reasons for why people distrust mainstream narratives, and there are some bad reasons why people distrust mainstream narratives. Like COVID is a great example of a bad reason for why people just completely stopped listening to mainstream news. They were like, "F this, they're lying to us every step of the way." Meanwhile, they actually were following their primary function of creating a sense of security, like a security environment, getting their notes from epidemiologists in an effort to make sure that this new novel disease was not killing people by the millions, which they still failed on, so it doesn't even matter. They were, at that point, disseminating information, and yet a lot of people were very frustrated by the information that they were presenting and hated them and looked for alternative avenues.